So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
There comes a time when waiting becomes dangerous, when patience, once a virtue, becomes a cage.
I need to know more before we get involved.
In Andor Season 2, we're watching the rebellion learn that lesson the hard way. So there's this philosophical tension in Andor Season 2, and it's not just between the Empire and the rebellion. There's a larger problem here. It's the difference between caution and courage. And where does that line fall? Because Luthen is a master manipulator. He has to be. He's condemned.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy.
And so he's always waiting for the right moment. But Andor is more impetuous, and he and Bix are sick of the waiting, and they want to choose now. Hey, I'm Riley. I'm an Air Force officer and massive nerd. And in this video, we're going to discuss the idea of patience as a virtue or when it becomes a crutch. And you're watching Geeky Stoics. So it's no surprise, like Stoicism teaches endurance, it teaches temperance, really timing, like that's a big part of the philosophy, but Stoicism never preaches passivity. But biding your time, biting your tongue, waiting for the right moment, that's not just an element of Stoicism or even broader Western philosophy. It's literally one of the ancient proverbs. It was written by King Solomon: whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly. And so in a way, Luthen is using patience to control others.
It's overwhelming, I know you. You've been struggling.
Because he believes the rebellion needs this suffering to be born. But the question is, at what cost?
You're thinking small, you're thinking like a thief.
As I'm recording this, we're like halfway through season 2 of Andor. And what's so obvious to me is that Luthen is kind of, in that speech in season 1, he's so clear about being condemned to use the tools of his enemy. And I think there's an element there that you begin to lose your own sense of morality in a way. And we're seeing that with Luthen in the way that he talks about the planet Gorman, because Andor tells him that, like, if he goes through with this plan for a Gorman operation, the planet will burn. And Luthen in turn says, but it will burn brightly. He's basically implying that an uprising on Gorman, while it will cost the lives of millions, it may not even be like tactically or strategically the best idea for the rebellion, symbolically, like trying to build up the resistance to the Empire and to the Empire's tyranny, he wants the world to see that so that he can essentially foment an uprising.
It will burn very brightly.
We'll get the rebellion to where we find it in A New Hope, which is where this season of Andor is going. The question of tactics begins to blur the line, and that's kind of the point of Andor as a series, and it gives us this opportunity, like here at Geeky Stoics, to actually have the conversation about where this gray line of morality goes. Like, were the early rebels cursed to use techniques that were not kosher, that were essentially morally wrong in and of themselves for the ends? It's the classic ends justify the means kind of conundrum. And that's really where Luthen the manipulator really starts to dance on that line. He's really straddling the fence with what is or isn't moral in the context of fighting a rebellion against a tyrannical empire. And this really gets into, like, in the final episode of the most recent arc, Vel and Senta's relationship. And this really, it becomes obvious that Luthen is the one who's separated them. He sees them as more useful to the rebellion apart. Essentially, they are pawns in his chessboard so that he can best leverage them for the future of the rebellion. But again, at the cost of their own desires of what they want, which is kind of the whole point of what the rebellion of fighting for freedom in the first place is all about. And this is where I think sometimes for us, the lesson we can learn watching these most recent episodes of Andor, and that is that we hide from risk, but we often justify it, I think, by wrapping ourselves in the illusion of timing it right. The timing just has to be perfect. But at some point, that's where, again, you can't let patience be a crutch. You can let it, I think patience is a virtue up to a point, but eventually you have to take action. And that's what we see with Cassian and Bix. Bix is suffering, like she has suffered grave injustice and grave evil. And that warrants a form of justice, a form of, at some point, action is required to respond to the evil that Bix has experienced at the hands of the Empire. You know, Cassian did warn Luthen what would happen on Gorman. Like he saw the people and not just the politics of the moment. But Luthen's willing to sacrifice Gorman and because he wants this spark that's going to burn brightly. He's like, light the fire that's going to spark the freedom to ignite the something.
It'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Sorry, had to go there. But at the beginning of this arc, Bix is really the passive one. So we're talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 here. And she's really like suffering, numbing the pain with substance abuse. Like she's in a rough spot. She's literally like crashing on the couch, watching whatever the Star Wars version of The View is. And that is where she starts. But that is certainly not where her story ends in this episode arc. And this is where revenge is that dish best served cold. Like, she is ready to seek revenge. And again, revenge not just because it's some kind of emotional catharsis for her or really for the audience, because we've seen the horrors that she's endured, but it's justice. It's albeit pioneer justice, but justice in a galaxy where it's disappeared under the iron fist of the Empire. Ultimately, what the final scene is about, when she literally tortures the torturer, she's seen evil in the face and she's responding. She is taking action. And that is a quintessentially Star Wars thing. That's what I really appreciated about this episode, because you think about it, I immediately thought of the original trilogy, specifically Empire Strikes Back, and Luke Skywalker as the archetype of balancing that patience versus action. Is like, when is patience a crutch? For Luke, it's the Empire Strikes Back, and he's training with Yoda, and he gets that vision of what's going to happen in Cloud City, the death of his friends, and he rushes off. He literally impetuously rushes to go save Han and Leia before he is ready. He had the right intentions, but the timing was poor in that he wasn't ready from perspective of training. But here's the interesting thing about Empire Strikes Back. I really think the lesson is, in a way, Yoda and Obi-Wan were wrong. I actually think Luke did the right thing, even though he personally wasn't ready, and it cost him his hand. Like, it cost him dearly, but he did ultimately go and save his friends. So they lived on to fight another day, so that by the time we get to Return of the Jedi, not only is Luke ready, he's fully embraced his training with Yoda, but he's actually embraced his identity fully. It's literally the penultimate moment of the entire film is when he stands before the Emperor, where he stood at the brink and he almost became that thing that he hated. He literally has the opportunity to kill his father. He sees on his hand a representation of the thing that he could become. Because of that training on the cave in Dagobah, where for the first time Luke sees the potential of what he could become, I feel like that's the moment he's recalling when he decides that I am a Jedi, like my father before me. And that is a statement of identity. It's embracing who you are. It is fully taking action all the way to the point of living up to your full potential and identity. And that's the element that's important that we learn in the original trilogy, and we're seeing it also play out here in season 2 of Andor. And really what we're talking about in principle is wisdom. It's discernment. It's knowing when to move and how to move with the right purpose at the right time. And this is straight out of the tradition of Stoic wisdom. Like, so the Stoic philosopher Seneca, he said, quote, "Let us therefore set out wholeheartedly before we realize too late the swift and unstoppable flight of time." Because that's the thing, like, time won't wait. Time is the one thing we can never get back. You can always make more money. You can always build new friendships and relationships. There are a lot of things that we as humans have in this world, but unlimited time is not one of them. And that's why I think action is so closely tied to justice, and that's what we're seeing in Andor. But, there is fallout. Vel and Cinta do take action, and they do conduct the operation on Gorman, and it costs Cinta her life. Like, her death is a senseless death, and it reveals the dangers when you do rush in unprepared, and when you sacrifice on the altar of the mission of the moment. Maybe you sacrifice the greater good, because, like, that's the brilliant thing about the series. Like, the ISB definitely wants the uprising so that they can justify the tyranny of literally massacring the Gorman people. But there's this strange parallel, and that's where we get to the gray area that Luthen is living in. The ISB does want an uprising to justify the tyranny, and Luthen wants the Empire's overreach at any cost, really, so that it justifies and foments the cause, the rebellion.
What fun.
The tragic piece of that view is that it's people like Cassian and Vel who have to live and die because of the consequences. But they are choosing to act. They're choosing to take action in the name of justice, no matter the cost to them personally. And I think that's really a very inspiring, if not kind of dark element of this series. That's the takeaway. There is a time, it's also biblical wisdom, but like there is a time and a season for everything. There is a time for waiting, but there's also a time for taking action. And I think in Andor season 2, we're getting towards the end of patience, because it actually, I think it can become a vice when it replaces courage. And Stoicism doesn't ask us to freeze. It teaches us to prepare so that we can make our move when the time is right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hey, join the Geeky Stoics community on our Substack newsletter. It's the first link in the description below. I hope to see you there. And until next time, may the Force be with you always.